A millionaire, devastated by his son's incurable diagnosis, could no longer find comfort, not even in the world's greatest specialists. In a moment of despair, a poor girl approaches with a serene gaze and a simple cookie in her hands. She says something so pure and unexpected that it leaves him speechless. "I adopt you as daddy." He was in shock, and what he did changed everything. Boston's financial district stood silent beneath a blanket of December snow, the kind that muffled every sound except for the rhythmic crunch of expensive leather shoes on the white-covered steps. William Harrington, once named among Fortune's 40 under 40 most influential business leaders, now at 45, found himself sitting alone on the cold stone steps of his luxury condominium building. The tears came without warning, hot against his frozen cheeks. 3 years had passed since the accident that took away his family, his wife Eleanor and their 6-year-old son James, yet the wound remained as raw as if it had happened yesterday. The holiday season only sharpened the pain. Christmas lights twinkled mockingly across Beacon Hill, their cheerful glow at odds with the emptiness inside him. William wasn't crying over his latest acquisition or the billion-dollar merger his company had just finalized. Money had become merely numbers on a screen, meaningless figures that could never fill the void left behind. He was crying for the life stolen from him, for Eleanor's laugh that once filled their home, and James's small hand that would never again slip trustingly into his. "Mister, are you okay?" The small voice startled him. William quickly wiped his face and looked up to find a little girl, no older than 7, standing before him. She wore a threadbare winter coat several sizes too large, mittens with tiny holes at the fingertips, and carried a small paper bag that emitted a warm, nutty aroma. "I'm fine," he replied stiffly, embarrassed at being caught in such a vulnerable moment. The girl tilted her head, studying him with eyes far too perceptive for her age. "You don't look fine. People who are fine don't cry when it snows." Her directness caught him off guard. William found himself answering honestly. "Sometimes snow makes me remember things I've lost." She nodded as if this made perfect sense. "My grandma says tears wash the soul clean." Without asking permission, she sat beside him on the cold step and opened her paper bag. "Want a roasted chestnut? My grandma and I sell them down by the commons. These are the extras." William hesitated before accepting one. The warm nut burned his cold fingers pleasantly. "Thank you. What's your name?" Lily Carson." She popped a chestnut into her mouth. "And you're the man who lives in the penthouse. I've seen you coming and going in your fancy car." William realized she must live nearby. "I'm William Harrington." "That's an awful long name. Can I call you Will?" No one had called him Will since Eleanor. He'd been William in boardrooms, Mr. Harrington to employees, Sir to service staff. The diminutive felt strange, almost intimate. "I suppose you can." Lily smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "Good. I like making new friends, Will." They sat in silence for a moment, sharing chestnuts while snowflakes drifted around them. Then Lily began to hum softly, a Christmas carol that Eleanor used to sing to James. William felt his throat tighten. "My mommy works nights," Lily volunteered suddenly. "She cleans offices downtown. Grandma takes care of me and Grandpa. Grandpa used to build things, big buildings like this one, but now his hands shake too much." William nodded, unsure what to say to this child who shared her life so openly. "Why are you out here all alone?" she continued. "Don't you have a family to be with?" The question pierced him. I used to." Something in his tone made Lily stop asking questions. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slightly crumpled paper snowflake. "Here, I made this today. You can have it." William accepted the delicate creation, noting the careful cuts that formed a symmetrical pattern. "Thank you, Lily. It's beautiful." "Lily Carson, what are you doing?" A concerned voice called from across the street. An elderly woman, bundled in layers of worn clothing, hurried toward them, her face etched with worry. "I've been looking everywhere for you, child." "I'm fine, Grandma Ruth," Lily said. "I was just keeping Will company." He was sad. The woman, Ruth, looked at William with an apologetic expression that shifted to recognition. "Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry if my granddaughter bothered you." William stood, brushing snow from his expensive coat. "She wasn't bothering me at all, Mrs. Carson. In fact, she was quite comforting." Ruth's weathered face softened. Well, we should be getting home. It's getting colder, and we live just a few blocks away. In the old brick building on Walnut Street, Lily supplied helpfully. The one with the broken elevator. Lily, her grandmother gently admonished, Mr. Harrington doesn't need to know where we live. William found himself smiling slightly, the first genuine smile in what felt like years. It's fine, really. As Lily took her grandmother's hand, she turned back to William. Will you be here tomorrow? Because nobody should be alone when they're sad. Before William could formulate a response, Ruth spoke. Lily, Mr. Harrington is a busy man. He has important things to do. What struck William wasn't the assumption itself, it was true, after all, that his calendar was packed with meetings and conference calls, but how hollow those important things suddenly seemed compared to the simple human connection he'd just experienced. Actually, he heard himself saying, I might be around tomorrow evening. Lily's face lit up. Promise? Because tomorrow's Christmas Eve. We always have hot chocolate and cookies on Christmas Eve. Lily, her grandmother began, but William interrupted gently. I can't promise, but I'll try. Ruth studied him with wise eyes that seemed to see beyond his expensive suit to the broken man beneath. You'd be welcome, Mr. Harrington. Sometimes a stranger's kindness is the best medicine for a troubled heart. After they departed, William remained on the steps, the paper snowflake still in his hand. The vast emptiness of his penthouse loomed above him, $15 million of exquisite design and cutting-edge technology that had never felt like home since the accident. His phone buzzed. Marcus Chen, his COO, was calling about the Westridge acquisition, a deal worth billions that would cement Harrington Enterprises' dominance in the tech sector. It was the kind of call William would normally take immediately, regardless of the hour. Instead, he silenced the phone and watched the snow continue to fall, thinking about a little girl named Lily, who offered chestnuts to strangers, and a grandmother who spoke of kindness as medicine. The next morning, William woke before dawn. His sleep had been restless, filled with dreams of Eleanor and James, but for once they weren't nightmares. Just memories, bittersweet but somehow less painful than before. Marcus called again at 6:30 a.m. William, where were you last night? The Tokyo investors are waiting for your decision on the Westridge deal. We need to move on this today. William glanced at his calendar. Back-to-back meetings, calls with international partners, a lunch with the mayor and a charity gala in the evening, the standard schedule of a man who filled every minute to avoid facing his emptiness. Clear my morning? Marcus, he said, surprising both himself and his COO. What? William, the board is expecting. They can wait. There's somewhere I need to go. After hanging up, William stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city emerge from darkness. The snow had stopped, leaving Boston transformed into a winter wonderland. In the distance, he could see Boston Common, where a little girl and her grandmother sold chestnuts to make ends meet. For the first time in 3 years, William felt something shift inside him, not happiness, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. And it had taken a child's simple kindness to crack the shell he'd built around himself. He looked down at the paper snowflake, still on his nightstand, where he'd placed it the night before. A decision crystallized in his mind, as delicate and yet as definite as the pattern of cuts in Lily's creation. Today he would visit Eleanor and James, and tonight, perhaps he would return to those snowy steps, where a little girl had reminded him that he was still capable of human connection. Mount Auburn Cemetery was peaceful under its blanket of snow. William stood before the twin headstones, marble monuments that seemed far too cold and formal to contain the warmth of the people they represented. He'd brought fresh flowers, Eleanor's favorite white roses and a small toy truck for James, and carefully brushed away the snow that had accumulated overnight. I met someone yesterday, William said softly, his breath forming clouds in the winter air. A little girl. She reminded me of you, James, that same fearlessness you had talking to anyone. He paused, his voice catching. And she has your kindness, Ellie. For 3 years, his visits to the cemetery had been silent, grief-stricken rituals. Today felt different. He wasn't just mourning. He was talking to them, sharing something new. I've been existing, not living. I know that's not what you'd want for me. William knelt in the snow, uncaring about his $1,000 suit pants. I'm thinking about trying something different today, just being present with someone. It feels terrifying. A small robin landed on Eleanor's headstone, its red breast bright against the white landscape. It tilted its head, studying William with a curious eye. James had loved birds, had a whole collection of books about them. The coincidence made William's breath catch. "Is that you giving me permission?" he whispered. The bird chirped once, then flew away, but William felt something loosen in his chest. Perhaps it was just his imagination, but it felt like a sign. As he stood to leave, his phone buzzed again. Marcus again. "The board is asking questions, William. This isn't like you." "I need today, Marcus." "Handle it. The Westridge deal. We'll still be there tomorrow." William ended the call and took one last look at the graves. "I'll try," he promised to himself as much as to Eleanor and James. "I'll try to find my way back." As dusk fell over Boston, William found himself once more on the steps of his building. He'd cancelled the charity gala, sending a sizable donation instead. He'd bought a bag of premium chocolates from a boutique chocolatier and a delicate glass snowflake ornament from a nearby gallery. Now he sat waiting, feeling oddly vulnerable. What if they didn't come? What if yesterday had been a random encounter, never to be repeated? Why did that possibility make his heart constrict? "You came back!" Lily's voice cut through his thoughts. She was bouncing toward him, her too large coat flapping around her small frame, her grandmother following more sedately behind. "I told Grandma Ruth you would." "I said I'd try," William replied, surprised by the warmth that spread through him at her enthusiasm. "That means the same thing as a promise," Lily declared, with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Look, I made you something." She thrust a piece of paper at him. It was a crayon drawing of two figures, a tall man in what appeared to be a suit, and a small girl with yellow hair. "That's us," she explained unnecessarily. "I wrote Friends Forever because that's what we are now." William accepted the drawing carefully, as if it were as valuable as any of the original artworks hanging in his penthouse. "Thank you, Lily. I brought you something too." He offered the chocolates. "Fancy candy." Lily's eyes widened as she opened the box. "Grandma, look! They're shaped like seashells." Ruth smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Harrington." "William, please," he insisted, then cleared his throat. "I also brought this." He handed the glass snowflake to Ruth. "For your Christmas tree." "It's beautiful," she said, holding it up so it caught the light from a nearby street lamp. "But I couldn't possibly, please. It would mean a lot to me if you accepted it." Ruth studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, William." Lily had already popped one of the chocolates into her mouth, her expression rapturous. "These are better than any candy I've ever had." "Save some for your mother and grandfather," Ruth reminded her. "Speaking of which," Lily said, turning her attention back to William, "why are you sitting out here all alone on Christmas Eve? Don't you have a family dinner to go to?" Ruth gave her granddaughter a gentle, admonishing look. "Lily, that's a personal question," but William found himself wanting to answer. "No, it's all right. I lost my family. My wife Eleanor and our son James, they were taken from me in an accident 3 years ago." The words hung in the cold air between them. William had never spoken about it so directly to anyone outside his inner circle. It felt both painful and oddly freeing. Lily's face grew solemn. "That's why you were crying?" "Yes?" She considered this for a moment, then reached out and took his hand in her small mittened one. "My daddy left when I was a baby. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a father. It's not the same as your family, but I know what it's like when people go away and don't come back." The simple empathy in her words touched William deeply. Here was this child who had so little, offering comfort to him, who had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered. "Lily," Ruth said gently, "we should let Mr. Harrington William get back to his evening." "But it's Christmas Eve," Lily protested. "Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve." She turned her earnest gaze to William. "Would you like to come have hot chocolate with us? Mom will be home by 9 and Grandpa makes the best hot chocolate in all of Boston." William hesitated. The invitation was tempting in a way he couldn't quite articulate. A modest apartment with this little family seemed infinitely more appealing than his empty penthouse, with its spectacular city views. "I wouldn't want to impose," he said, looking to Ruth. The older woman smiled. "You wouldn't be imposing at all. Our home isn't fancy, but it's warm, and there's always room for one more at our table." "Please say yes," Lily added. Grandpa tells the best stories and Mom made cookies before she left for work. Something within William, a wall he'd built around himself, began to crumble. I'd be honored to join you. The building on Walnut Street was indeed old, with a facade that spoke of better days. The elevator was out of order, as Lily had mentioned, forcing them to climb 4 flights of stairs. Ruth apologized repeatedly, but William found he didn't mind. There was something honest about the worn carpet and faded paint that made the place feel more genuine than his sterile luxury. The Carson apartment was small, but meticulously kept. Warm light spilled from modest lamps, and a small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments and twinkling lights. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air. "Grandpa, we brought a friend," Lily announced as they entered. An elderly man with a shock of white hair looked up from his armchair by the window. Despite his age and the walking cane propped beside him, there was strength in his broad shoulders, the build of a man who had spent his life in physical labor. "Well, now who's this?" he asked, his voice warm with interest. "This is Will," Lily said importantly. "He was sad, so I invited him for hot chocolate." "Joseph Carson," the old man said, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Any friend of my Lily's is welcome here." William shook his hand, feeling calluses that spoke of decades of honest work. "William Harrington, thank you for having me." Recognition flickered in Joseph's eyes. "Harrington!" "Of Harrington Enterprises." William nodded, suddenly uncomfortable. His name often changed how people treated him, and he'd been enjoying the simple human connection without the baggage of his wealth and position. But Joseph merely nodded. "My crew helped build the foundation for your tower downtown. Back in '98, good solid work." "The best in the city," William agreed, relieved that Joseph seemed unimpressed by his status. "Lily, why don't you help me in the kitchen?" Ruth suggested, giving the men space to talk. As they disappeared into the kitchen, Joseph gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit, Mr. Harrington. Tell me how you came to know my granddaughter." William sat, feeling strangely at ease in this humble apartment. "She found me, actually. I was having a difficult moment, and she offered me chestnuts and conversation." Joseph nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That sounds like our Lily. Never met a stranger she couldn't turn into a friend." He studied William for a moment. "You're carrying a heavy load, son." I recognized the look. I've seen it in the mirror. Something about the old man's directness invited honesty. "I lost my wife and son 3 years ago. The holidays are challenging." "Grief doesn't go away," Joseph said quietly. "That's the first lie people tell you, that time heals all wounds. It doesn't, but it can transform. The pain becomes a different kind of memory, less like a knife, more like a photograph you carry." William found himself nodding. "I've been trying to outrun it. Work more, build more, acquire more." "And how's that working out for you?" Joseph asked, not unkindly. "Not well," William admitted. "Hot chocolate delivery," Lily announced, returning with a mug that seemed almost too big for her hands. "With extra marshmallows because it's Christmas Eve." The hot chocolate was unlike anything William had tasted in years, rich and homemade, not the artisanal version his personal chef occasionally prepared. This was comfort in a mug, warming him from the inside in a way that went beyond temperature. "It's my secret recipe," Joseph said with a wink. "Been perfecting it for 50 years. "It's wonderful," William replied honestly. "Thank you." Lily had settled on the floor near his feet, organizing the chocolates he'd brought by shape and size before eating them. Her methodical approach reminded him painfully of James, who had sorted his toys the same way. "So, Mr. Harrington," Joseph continued, "Lily tells me you live in the big fancy building on Beacon Street." "The penthouse," Lily added importantly. "I bet you can see the whole city from up there." William nodded. "You can. But lately I haven't been looking much." Joseph's eyes were shrewd. "Too busy or too painful?" "Both, I suppose." The conversation flowed easily after that, moving from Joseph's days in construction to the changes in Boston over the decades. William found himself genuinely interested in the old man's perspective on how development had transformed neighborhoods, sometimes for better, sometimes not. "Your new tech campus in Seaport is bringing jobs," Joseph acknowledged, "but the rents around there have doubled. Pushed out families who'd been there for generations." William hadn't considered this side effect of his company's expansion. "I hadn't thought about that aspect." Most developers don't, Joseph said without accusation. It's not malice, just different priorities. Before William could respond, the front door opened, letting in a gust of cold air and a woman in a cleaner's uniform. She looked exhausted, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face showing the strain of a long day's work. "Mom!" Lily jumped up and ran to her, wrapping her arms around the woman's waist. "You're home early, and guess what? I brought a friend for Christmas Eve." The woman looked up, her tired eyes widening as she registered William's presence. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know we had company." She quickly tried to smooth her rumpled uniform. "Sarah, this is William Harrington," Ruth introduced. "Lily met him yesterday and invited him to join us tonight." "Harrington?" Sarah echoed, recognition flickering across her features. "As in—" "He was sad and alone," Lily interrupted, "so I told him nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve." Sarah's face softened at her daughter's explanation. "Well, Lily's right about that." She extended her hand to William. "Sarah Carson, please excuse my appearance. The office buildings I clean aren't exactly concerned with how late they keep their cleaning staff on Christmas Eve." William shook her hand, struck by the quiet dignity in her bearing despite her obvious fatigue. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sarah, and please don't apologize. I'm the one who should be apologizing for intruding on your family evening." "Nonsense," Joseph cut in. "The more the merrier at Christmas." Sarah smiled at her father, then turned back to William. "Well, you're very welcome here, Mr. Harrington." "William, please." "William," she nodded. "If you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'd like to freshen up." As Sarah disappeared into what William presumed was the bathroom, he found himself struck by the family dynamics he was witnessing. Despite their obvious financial struggles, there was a warmth and connection between the Carsons that made their modest apartment feel more like a home than his luxury penthouse ever had. "Mom works really hard," Lily said, reclaiming her spot near William. "She cleans offices at night and takes online classes during the day. She's going to be a nurse someday." "That's impressive," William said sincerely. "It's necessary," Ruth added quietly. "Single mother raising a child in Boston, not easy in the best of times, and these aren't the best of times." William nodded, thinking of the astronomical cost of living in the city, the barriers to advancement for someone like Sarah. "She sounds remarkable." "She is," Joseph said with obvious pride. "Never gives up, our Sarah." When Sarah returned, she had changed into jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. The transformation was striking. From exhausted worker to the confident, attractive woman she clearly was beneath the uniform. "So," she said, settling onto the couch beside her mother, "what brings a man like you to our humble abode on Christmas Eve, William?" There was a hint of challenge in her tone, not hostile but wary. William could understand her protective instinct, especially given the vast difference in their circumstances. "Your daughter," he answered honestly. "She has a way of cutting through pretense." Sarah's expression softened. "That she does. Sometimes to my embarrassment." "Mom," Lily protested. "I was just being nice." Will was crying all alone in the snow. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Crying?" William felt heat rise to his face. "It's been a difficult time of year for me since I lost my family." Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. "I'm sorry, truly." "Will's wife and little boy went to heaven," Lily explained in a stage whisper. "Just like Daddy went away, but different." An awkward silence fell, but Joseph broke it with his gentle wisdom. "Loss comes in many forms, but it leaves the same hole in a heart." He raised his mug of hot chocolate. "To those we miss at Christmas." They all raised their mugs in silent acknowledgement, and William felt something shift inside him. A connection to these strangers, who somehow understood the shape of his pain without him having to explain it. The evening continued with the sharing of simple Christmas cookies that Sarah had baked early that morning. Lily insisted on playing a board game, an old edition of Scrabble with worn tiles and a board taped together at the creases. William couldn't remember the last time he'd played a board game, probably with James before the accident. Yet here he was, concentrating intensely on forming words with his tiles, while Lily giggled at his serious expression. "You don't have to let me win," she informed him solemnly, after he played a three-letter word when he clearly had better options. "I'm really good at Scrabble." "I can see that," William replied. watching as she triumphantly placed quixotic across a triple word score. "She reads everything she can get her hands on," Sarah explained with maternal pride. "The library is her second home. Books are like traveling without going anywhere," Lily said, clearly quoting someone. "Miss Jenkins at the library says that." William nodded. "Your Miss Jenkins is right." He remembered the extensive library in his penthouse, filled with books he hadn't touched in years. "I used to read to my son every night. He loved adventure stories." "What was his name?" Lily asked gently. "James. He was 6 when..." William swallowed hard. "When the accident happened." "Just a year younger than I am now," Lily calculated. She reached over and patted William's hand. "I bet he was nice like you." The simple kindness in her words brought a lump to William's throat. "I was much nicer than me, actually." As the game concluded, with Lily's decisive victory, Ruth began preparing to set the table for a light supper. William insisted on helping despite her protests. "You're our guest," she argued. "Please," he countered. "Let me be useful. It's been a long time since I've done anything ordinary like this." As they worked side by side in the tiny kitchen, Ruth spoke quietly. "You know, when Sarah's husband left, we thought she'd never recover. She was just 22 with a newborn and no support. But humans are remarkably resilient, William, given time and the right kind of love." William arranged plates on the table, considering her words. "I've had time. I'm not sure about the right kind of love." "Perhaps that's why Lily found you," Ruth suggested. "That child has an instinct for people who need healing." Before William could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, Marcus again, and for the first time in years, he silenced a business call without a second thought. Dinner was simple: a hearty soup, fresh bread, and a small roast chicken that Ruth explained was their Christmas Eve tradition. The conversation flowed naturally, with none of the artificial politeness that characterized William's usual business dinners. These people spoke from the heart, disagreed openly, laughed genuinely. "Do you have Christmas plans, William?" Sarah asked as they finished their meal. "No," he admitted. "I usually work through the holidays." Lily looked horrified. "Work on Christmas? That's against the rules." William couldn't help but smile at her outrage. "Is it?" "Absolutely," she nodded firmly. "Christmas is for family and presents and remembering to be kind to everybody." "Well, when you put it that way." "You should come back tomorrow," Lily declared, "for Christmas dinner." "Right, Mom?" Sarah looked momentarily surprised, then smiled warmly. "Of course. You'd be very welcome, William." "I couldn't impose again," he began. "It's not an imposition," Joseph cut in. "It's Christmas." And Lily's right. Nobody should be alone, especially not tomorrow. William felt something unfamiliar, a lightness in his chest where the heavy weight of grief usually sat. "Then thank you. I'd be honored." As the evening drew to a close, William reluctantly prepared to leave. The thought of returning to his empty penthouse no longer seemed merely lonely. It seemed almost unbearable after the warmth of the Carson apartment. At the door, Lily hugged him impulsively. "See you tomorrow, Will. I'm glad you're not sad anymore." "I'm glad too, Lily," he replied, surprised to realize it was true. He wasn't exactly happy, but the sharp edge of his pain had dulled, if only temporarily. Sarah walked him to the stairs. "Thank you for indulging her," she said quietly. "Lily gets these ideas in her head, and she's impossible to dissuade once she decides someone needs her help." "She was right," William admitted. "I did need help. I just didn't know what kind until she found me." Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight sparkling off the fresh snow that had fallen overnight. William woke early, as was his habit, but instead of immediately reaching for his phone to check emails, he lay still, remembering the previous evening with the Carson family. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than numbness or pain. It wasn't happiness exactly, but perhaps its distant cousin, a quiet contentment, a momentary peace. Eventually, he rose and made himself coffee. The sprawling penthouse felt different somehow, not quite as empty, as if the memory of Lily's laughter had lingered in the air. He walked to the windows that overlooked Boston, seeing the city with new eyes. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment with a broken elevator, a family was celebrating Christmas morning together. His phone rang. Marcus, of course. "William, Merry Christmas. I hate to disturb you, but the Westridge team sent over revised terms, and I think you'll want to see them before we respond. They're trying to leverage the holiday to pressure us into concessions. In the past, William would have immediately shifted into business mode, demanding details and planning countermoves. Today, he found himself strangely detached from the urgency. It can wait until tomorrow, Marcus. Tomorrow? But the timing is critical. If we don't respond today, then they'll wait, William said firmly. It's Christmas, Marcus. Take the day off. Be with your family. There was a startled silence on the other end. Are you feeling all right, William? Better than I have in years, actually. He ended the call before Marcus could protest further. As William showered and dressed, he thought about what to bring to the Carsons for Christmas dinner. Traditional wine seemed inadequate, and they'd likely be uncomfortable with anything too extravagant. Eventually, he settled on a strategy and made a few calls to contacts who owed him favors, people who wouldn't mind working briefly on Christmas Day for the right compensation. By noon, William was walking the few blocks to the Carsons building, carrying several packages wrapped in simple red paper. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, less affluent than his own, certainly, but with a character and history that Beacon Hill sometimes lacked beneath its polished historic facade. As he approached the building, he noticed a man in a suit affixing something to the front door. Drawing closer, William saw it was a notice of some kind. The man departed quickly, not making eye contact with the residents coming and going. Curiosity piqued, William paused to read the notice once the man had left. It was an announcement of a substantial rent increase, effective in 30 days. The language was coldly legal, but the message was clear. Many residents would be priced out of their homes. The building owner, Eastland Properties LLC, cited necessary renovations and market adjustments as justification for the nearly 40% increase. William frowned, recognizing the tactic. Eastland was known for acquiring older buildings in gentrifying areas, forcing out long-term residents through steep rent hikes, then converting the units to luxury condominiums. William took a photo of the notice with his phone, then continued inside, a new concern weighing on his mind as he climbed the 4 flights of stairs. Lily opened the door before he could knock, as if she'd been watching for him. "Will, you came. Merry Christmas." She wore a red dress that looked new but not expensive, her hair tied back with a festive ribbon. "Merry Christmas, Lily," he replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. "I brought some presents, if that's all right." "Presents?" Her eyes widened at the packages in his arms. "Mom, Grandma, Will brought presents." Sarah appeared behind her daughter, looking more rested than she had the previous night. She wore a simple green sweater that brought out the color in her eyes, and William was struck again by how attractive she was when not exhausted from work. "You didn't have to bring gifts, William," she said, but her smile was warm. "Please, come in." The apartment was filled with the aroma of cooking food and the sound of Christmas music playing softly from an old radio. Joseph sat in his armchair, looking festive in a red sweater, while Ruth bustled between the kitchen and the small dining table, which had been decorated with a homemade centerpiece of pine branches and candles. "Merry Christmas, everyone," William said, feeling unexpectedly emotional at the scene of domestic tranquility. "Set those down by the tree," Sarah directed, gesturing to his packages. "Can I get you some eggnog? Dad makes it from scratch." "That would be wonderful, thank you." As Sarah went to the kitchen, Lily took William's hand and led him to the small sofa. "We already opened our presents this morning," she informed him. "I got books and new mittens and a science kit from Santa." "That sounds perfect," William replied. "I'm sorry I missed it. It's okay. You're here now." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Did you see the bad paper on the door downstairs?" So she had noticed. William nodded. "I did. Grandma was crying when she read it. She thinks I didn't see, but I did." Before William could respond, Sarah returned with a glass of eggnog. "Here you are. Dad's special recipe. Careful, it's got a kick." William accepted the glass gratefully. "Thank you. It smells delicious." Joseph raised his own glass in a toast. "10 to new friends at Christmas." They all raised their glasses, but William couldn't help noticing the strain behind Ruth's smile. The notice downstairs had clearly cast a shadow over their celebration. "Is everything all right?" he asked quietly when Lily had gone to help her grandmother in the kitchen. Sarah hesitated, then sighed. "We just got some bad news. The building owner is raising the rent by almost 40%. We can't afford that." Not with Dad's medical bills and my tuition. I saw the notice, William admitted. Eastland Properties isn't known for their compassion. You know them. I know of them. They have a reputation in real estate circles. He paused. How long have you lived here? All my life, Sarah replied. Mom and Dad moved here when they got married. I grew up in this apartment. Now Lily is growing up here. Her voice caught. At least she was. William felt a surge of anger at the faceless corporation disrupting this family's life. Have you looked into tenant rights? Boston has some protections. Sarah shook her head. We've been month to month since our last lease expired. They're within their rights, she forced a smile. But it's Christmas, and I refuse to let this ruin our day. We'll figure something out. Dinner was a masterpiece of home cooking, a small turkey with all the traditional sides, prepared with obvious care despite limited resources. The conversation flowed easily, with Lily keeping everyone entertained with stories from school and Joseph sharing tales of Christmases past. Yet William couldn't shake the knowledge that this might be their last Christmas in this home. The thought bothered him more than he would have expected a few days ago. After dinner, they gathered around the small tree for gift opening. William felt suddenly self-conscious about his packages. These aren't anything extravagant, he assured them. Just small tokens of my appreciation for your kindness. You didn't need to bring anything, Ruth protested. I wanted to, William insisted. Please. Lily, appointed as gift distributor, carefully read the tags and handed out William's presents. For Joseph, there was a rare book on Boston's architectural history that William had found in his own library. For Ruth, a delicate cashmere scarf in a soft blue that complemented her eyes. For Sarah, a gift certificate for a day spa. Everyone deserves pampering sometimes, William explained when she protested. And for Lily, a collection of classic children's books that had been James's favorites, delivered from William's penthouse that morning. These were my sons, he explained, as Lily reverently opened the beautifully bound collection. He would want another child to enjoy them. I'll take really good care of them, Lily promised solemnly, forever and ever. The afternoon passed pleasantly with more eggnog, Christmas cookies and board games. William couldn't remember the last time he'd spent hours simply enjoying the company of others, with no agenda, no business to discuss, no networking to accomplish. As dusk fell, Sarah disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a small wrapped package. We have something for you too, she said. Offering it to William, he accepted it with surprise. You didn't have to. We wanted to, she interrupted, echoing his earlier words. It's not much, but... William unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a hand-knitted scarf in deep blue wool. Ruth made it, Sarah explained. We started it last night after you left. Worked on it in shifts. William ran his fingers over the soft wool, deeply touched by the gesture. It's beautiful. Thank you. He wrapped it around his neck immediately, feeling the warmth that came not just from the wool but from the thought behind it. Blue suits you, Ruth observed with satisfaction. Brings out your eyes. Later, as William prepared to leave, Joseph asked for a private word. They moved to the small kitchen, while the others cleaned up in the living room. I want to thank you, Joseph said, his voice low, for giving us a bright spot in what might otherwise have been a difficult day. I should be thanking you, William replied honestly. You've shown me what I've been missing. Joseph nodded, understanding in his eyes. I saw your face when Sarah mentioned the rent increase. You're troubled by it. I am. It seems wrong, displacing families who've built their lives here. That's business, Joseph shrugged. Or so they say. Not all business has to be heartless, William said, an idea beginning to form in his mind. Joseph studied him thoughtfully. No, I suppose it doesn't. He patted William's shoulder. Whatever you're thinking, son, remember that proud people sometimes need help in ways that preserve their dignity. William nodded, taking the wisdom to heart. I understand. As Sarah walked him to the door, William found himself reluctant to leave. The contrast between the warmth of the Carson apartment and the cold emptiness of his penthouse seemed starker than ever. Thank you again for including me today, he said. It's been healing. Sarah smiled, and William noticed how it transformed her face, erasing the worry lines that had appeared when she discussed the rent increase. You're welcome any time, William, truly. In the hallway, away from Lily's ears, William asked, May I inquire about your plans? With the rent situation, I mean. Sarah's smile faded. Honestly, I don't know. We've been saving for months, so I could cut back my hours when clinical rotations start for my nursing program. This wipes out that plan completely. William spent the next few days in a flurry of activity, much to the bewilderment of his executive team. He cancelled meetings, delegated decisions that would normally require his personal attention, and spent hours on phone calls with contacts in Boston's real estate sector. "Are you having some kind of midlife crisis?" Marcus asked bluntly, after William postponed a board meeting for the third time. "First you disappear on Christmas Eve, then you're unreachable on Christmas Day, and now you're more interested in some random apartment building than the Westridge acquisition." "I'm reprioritizing," William replied calmly, "and I'm still handling the Westridge deal, just not at the expense of everything else." Marcus looked skeptical, but knew better than to push further. In the 15 years they'd worked together, he'd never seen William so focused on something outside the business. By New Year's Eve, William had what he needed: property records, financial statements, building inspections, and most importantly, a clear understanding of Eastland Properties' position. The company was over-leveraged, having expanded too quickly in a cooling market. They needed cash and were counting on the quick conversion of buildings like the Carsons into luxury units to shore up their balance sheet. William could work with that. He hadn't seen the Carsons since Christmas, though Lily had called him twice on the number he'd given Sarah for emergencies, once to tell him about a snow fort she'd built, and once to ask if he knew why stars twinkled. He'd answered her questions patiently, finding unexpected joy in her curiosity. Now, as evening approached on December 31st, William walked the familiar route to their building, carrying a portfolio of documents and a bottle of sparkling cider for their New Year's celebration. The notice about the rent increase still hung on the front door, now accompanied by a second notice about upcoming renovations that would require all tenants to temporarily relocate at their own expense. William's jaw tightened at the transparent attempt to force residents out through inconvenience if the cost increase didn't work. When he reached the Carsons' apartment, it was Joseph who answered his knock. The old man looked frailer than William remembered, his face drawn with worry despite his welcoming smile. "William, we weren't expecting you." Come in, come in." Inside, the apartment felt different. The Christmas decorations were gone and boxes were stacked against one wall. Ruth was at the table with Sarah, surrounded by papers, both looking stressed and tired. "Will." Lily's delighted cry broke the tension as she ran from her bedroom to greet him. "You came back. Are you here for our New Year's party?" "It's just us because Grandpa isn't feeling good. But we're going to have sandwiches cut in special shapes and watch the ball drop on TV." "That sounds wonderful," William replied, bending down to accept her hug. "And yes, I'd love to join your party if that's all right with everyone." Sarah stood, smoothing her hair self-consciously. "William, what a surprise. Of course you're welcome, though as Lily said, it's not much of a party." "Any celebration with friends is special," he said, offering the sparkling cider. "I brought a contribution." "How thoughtful." Ruth took the bottle with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'll put this in the refrigerator." William gestured to the boxes. "You're packing already?" Sarah sighed. "Just getting a head start. We need to find a place by the end of January, and affordable apartments in Boston don't exactly grow on trees." "Have you had any luck?" "Nothing we can afford that's close enough to Lily's school and my clinical rotation site. We might have to split up temporarily. Lily and Mom could stay with my cousin in Somerville while Dad and I find something else." The thought of this close-knit family being separated bothered William deeply. "Before you make any decisions, I'd like to share something with you, all of you if possible." Joseph gestured to the living room. "Let's sit down. This sounds important." Once they were all settled, Joseph in his armchair, Ruth and Sarah on the sofa, Lily cross-legged on the floor, William opened his portfolio. "I've been doing some research on your building situation," he began. "Eastland Properties purchased this building, and several others as part of a portfolio acquisition 6 months ago. Their business model is to convert affordable housing into luxury condominiums." "We know that much," Sarah said. "They've done it all over Boston." William nodded. "What you might not know is that they're currently facing financial difficulties. They expanded too quickly and now they're cash poor. That's why they're rushing these conversions. They need the money from luxury condo sales. Joseph leaned forward. How do you know all this? I have contacts in real estate finance, William replied, understating his connections considerably. The point is, they're vulnerable right now, and that creates an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Sarah asked, her tone cautious. William took a deep breath. I'd like to purchase this building. A stunned silence followed his statement. You want to buy our building? Ruth finally asked. Why would you do that? Several reasons, William explained. First, it's actually a sound investment. The location is excellent, and with proper management and modest improvements, it could generate steady returns without displacing the current residents. And the other reasons? Joseph prompted, his eyes shrewd. William met his gaze directly. Because I care about what happens to your family, and to the other families who live here. No one should be forced from their home because some corporation decided to maximize profits at human expense. Sarah studied him, her expression unreadable. That's incredibly generous, William, but I'm not sure we could accept such... It's not charity, he interrupted gently. It's business with a conscience. The residents would still pay rent, fair rent that increases only with inflation, not market speculation. I'd establish a trust to manage the property, with tenant representation on the board. You've thought this through, Joseph observed. I have. William passed him several pages of financial projections. These show how the building could remain affordable while still covering maintenance costs and reasonable returns. It's sustainable long-term. Joseph reviewed the numbers, nodding slowly. This could work. But why would Eastland sell to you when they have plans for luxury condos? Ruth asked practically. William smiled. Because I'm prepared to offer them something they need more than future profits. Immediate. Cash and a clean exit from a project that's increasingly complicated. He didn't mention that he'd already leveraged his considerable influence to create some of those complications through building inspections and zoning reviews. Sarah still looked skeptical. And what would you get out of this, William? I appreciate your kindness to us, but this is a multi-million-dollar transaction you're considering because your daughter befriended my daughter at Christmas. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't it? William countered quietly. For 3 years I've had wealth without purpose. I've made money because that's what I knew how to do, not because it brought me any satisfaction. Your family reminded me that there are more important things than profit margins. Lily, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Will wants to help because he's our friend, and friends help each other. Right, Will? William smiled at her. Exactly right, Lily. Sarah still seemed unconvinced. Even if you buy the building, what happens when you lose interest or decide it's not worth the hassle? We'd be back where we started. That's why I'm proposing a legally binding trust structure, William explained. Once established, it wouldn't depend on my continued involvement. The building would be permanently dedicated to affordable housing. Ruth reached over and took her daughter's hand. Sarah, I think we should consider this. Hey, it's not just about us. It's about all the families in this building. Sarah looked torn, and William recognized her struggle. She was proud, independent, and wary of solutions that seemed too good to be true. Think about it, he suggested. Review the documents. Get your own legal advice if you want. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Joseph nodded approvingly. Wise approach. Now I believe my granddaughter mentioned something about specially shaped sandwiches for our New Year's celebration. The tension broken, Lily jumped up. Yes, Mom and I made them. Come see. As they moved to the kitchen, William noticed Joseph struggling to rise from his chair. The old man's face contorted briefly in pain before he composed himself. Sarah hurried to help him, concern evident in her eyes. Dad, let me... I'm fine, Joseph insisted, though he accepted her arm. Just stiff today. William recalled Ruth's mention of medical bills and wondered if Joseph's condition was more serious than they'd let on. He made a mental note to look into health insurance options as part of his building plan. The evening progressed pleasantly, with Lily's carefully crafted sandwiches and Ruth's homemade cookies. They played board games while waiting for midnight, and William found himself relaxing completely in their company. Even Sarah seemed to warm up as the night went on, her initial skepticism giving way to tentative acceptance of his presence in their lives. Around 11, Joseph excused himself to rest, the evening clearly taxing his strength. Ruth helped him to their bedroom, leaving William alone with Sarah and Lily, who was fighting to stay awake until midnight. "She'll never make it," Sarah said fondly, watching Lily's eyes droop as she curled up on the couch. "She says this every year, but she's never actually seen the ball drop." William smiled. "Determination runs in the family, I see." "Stubbornness, my mother would say." Sarah's expression grew serious. "William, about your offer. You don't need to decide anything now." "I know, but I want you to understand something." She met his eyes directly. "We're not a charity case. We've struggled, yes, but we've always taken care of ourselves." "I never thought otherwise," William assured her. "That's why my proposal is structured as it is. Sustainable, not dependent on ongoing charity." Sarah nodded slowly. "I appreciate that, and I'm not dismissing your offer. Fair's just overwhelming. A week ago you were a stranger. Now you're offering to buy our building." "When you put it that way, it does sound rather abrupt," William acknowledged with a smile. "But sometimes life changes course unexpectedly. Meeting your family has shifted something in me, reminded me of things I'd forgotten." "What things?" she asked softly. "That business decisions affect real people. That wealth brings responsibility. That a home is more than just real estate." He paused. "That human connection matters more than anything else." Sarah studied him, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "You're not what I expected, William Harrington." "What did you expect?" "Someone more corporate, cold, detached." "I was all those things," he admitted. "For a long time after I lost my family, I shut down emotionally. Work became my only focus because it didn't require feeling anything. And now," William glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully on the couch. "Now I'm remembering how to feel again. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but necessary." Sarah smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face. "Well, for what it's worth, I like this version of you better." "So do I," William replied honestly. They talked quietly until midnight approached. Ruth rejoined them, reporting that Joseph was resting comfortably. As the TV showed the crowds gathering in Times Square, William felt a strange sense of rightness, as if this modest apartment with these kind people was exactly where he was meant to be on this night that symbolized new beginnings. When the ball began its descent, Sarah gently woke Lily. "Almost midnight, sweetheart. You made it this year." January brought a harsh cold snap to Boston, coating the city in ice and filling emergency rooms with slip-and-fall victims. Among them, on a particularly treacherous morning, was Joseph Carson. William received the call from Ruth while in the middle of a board meeting. He didn't hesitate, immediately excusing himself despite the startled expressions of his executives. Within 20 minutes, he was at Massachusetts General Hospital, where he found Ruth, Sarah, and Lily huddled anxiously in the waiting room. "William!" Lily ran to him, her face streaked with tears. "Grandpa fell down. He was getting the mail and the steps were all icy." William knelt to her level, his heart aching at her distress. "I'm so sorry, Lily. What have the doctors said?" "They're still examining him," Sarah explained, her voice strained. "They mentioned possible hip fracture, maybe some other complications because of his age and existing conditions." Ruth looked years older, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "He's been having balance issues lately. We should have gone with him to get the mail." "This isn't your fault," William assured her, settling into a chair beside them. "Do those things happen, especially in weather like this?" "Thank you for coming," Sarah said quietly. "You didn't have to." "Of course I did." "You're—" William paused, realizing the truth of what he was about to say. "You're important to me. All of you." A doctor appeared then, clipboard in hand. "Carson family?" They all stood, and William stepped slightly back, unsure if he should intrude on this private moment. But Sarah reached for his hand, drawing him forward with them. The news was mixed. Joseph had indeed fractured his hip, requiring surgery, but there were additional concerns. His heart showed signs of strain, and his overall condition was complicated by advancing Parkinson's disease, which the family had been managing quietly for several years. "He'll need the surgery," the doctor explained, "followed by extensive rehabilitation, and frankly, those stairs in your building will be impossible for him to navigate during recovery. Do you have options for ground floor living arrangements?" Ruth and Sarah exchanged worried glances. "We'll figure something out," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I may have a solution," William interjected. "If you'll allow me." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Joseph underwent successful surgery, while William accelerated his negotiations with Eastland Properties. Using a combination of financial pressure, regulatory leverage, and a very generous offer, he closed the deal in record time. By the time Joseph was ready for discharge, William had not only purchased the building, but had already begun renovations on a vacant ground-floor apartment. "I can't believe you did all this so quickly," Sarah marveled as she toured the renovated space. What had been a rundown one-bedroom unit was now a comfortable, accessible apartment with widened doorways for a wheelchair, grab bars in the bathroom, and a hospital bed in the bedroom. "Money speeds up construction schedules," William replied pragmatically. "And I have good contacts." "Still, this is—" Sarah gestured around the transformed space. "This is extraordinary." William shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. It's what needed to be done. The day Joseph came home from the hospital, the entire building seemed to turn out to welcome him. Neighbors brought food, offered help, and expressed relief that they wouldn't be losing their homes after all. Word had spread quickly about the building's new owner and his plans for affordable, stable housing. "You're quite the hero around here now," Joseph observed wryly as William helped settle him into his new living space. "Careful, or they'll start expecting you to fix the plumbing too." William laughed. "I draw the line at plumbing. That's what contractors are for." Once Joseph was comfortable, Ruth shooed everyone out, insisting he needed rest. William found himself walking with Sarah and Lily back to their original apartment, which they would maintain, while spending time helping Joseph and Ruth in the new ground-floor unit. "Ice cream break," Lily suggested hopefully. "We should celebrate Grandpa coming home." Sarah checked her watch. "I suppose we could. There's that place around the corner." "My treat," William offered, and they set off together, Lily skipping ahead, her earlier worry about her grandfather temporarily forgotten. At the ice cream shop, William watched as Lily deliberated with intense seriousness over her flavor choices. Sarah stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for today, but for everything. The building, the renovations, being there at the hospital." "You don't need to thank me," William replied. "Helping your family has given me purpose again. If anything, I should be thanking you." Sarah turned to face him fully. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. What changed? Before Christmas, you were just another wealthy businessman. Now you're buying buildings to help strangers and rushing to hospitals when someone you barely know gets hurt." William considered her question carefully. "Do you remember what Lily said to me that first night, about how tears wash the soul clean?" Sarah nodded. "I think that's what happened. For 3 years after I lost Eleanor and James, I stopped feeling. I functioned, I succeeded professionally, but I was hollow inside. Then your daughter found me crying in the snow, and instead of looking away, she sat down and offered me chestnuts." William smiled at the memory. "That simple act of kindness cracked something open in me." "She has that effect on people," Sarah said proudly, watching her daughter now animatedly explaining to the server exactly how many sprinkles constituted a lot. "It's not just Lily, though," William continued. "It's all of you. Joseph's wisdom, Ruth's warmth, your strength. You've shown me what family really means." Sarah's eyes softened. "I'm glad we could give you that." "Triple chocolate with extra sprinkles accomplished," Lily announced, returning with an ice cream cone that seemed precariously balanced. "Mom, what are you getting?" As January turned to February, William found himself increasingly involved in the Carsons' daily life. He visited Joseph regularly, tracking his recovery and often bringing books or newspapers to help the old man combat boredom. He attended Lily's school science fair, standing proudly beside Sarah as Lily explained her project on why snowflakes are unique. He even accompanied Ruth to doctor's appointments when Sarah was busy with clinical rotations. The building renovations expanded beyond the ground floor apartment. William hired contractors to repair the chronically broken elevator, update the heating system, and improve security without raising rents. He established the trust structure he'd proposed, ensuring the building's long-term affordability and putting Joseph, despite his protests, on the governing board. "I don't know anything about property management," Joseph objected. "You know what matters to the people who live here," William countered. "That's more important than real estate expertise." At Harrington Enterprises, the changes in William didn't go unnoticed. Marcus and the board watched with a mixture of concern and curiosity as their formerly single-minded CEO began delegating more responsibility, leaving the office at reasonable hours and even smiling occasionally. The Westridge acquisition closed successfully, Marcus noted during one executive meeting. Despite your new priorities. Because of my new priorities, William corrected. I'm making better decisions now that I have perspective. Not everyone appreciated the transformation. Some board members grumbled about William's new focus on social responsibility, particularly when he proposed a company-wide living wage initiative and affordable housing investments. We're not a charity, one director complained. No, we're better than that, William replied. We're a business that recognizes our responsibility to the communities where we operate. The debate continued, but William held firm. His experiences with the Carsons had changed his view of success, and he was determined that Harrington Enterprises would reflect those values going forward. One evening in late February, William joined the Carsons for dinner in the ground-floor apartment, which had become their gathering place during Joseph's recovery. The old man was progressing well, moving from wheelchair to walker and building strength daily. The physical therapist says I'm her star patient, Joseph announced proudly. Because you flirt with her, Ruth teased, setting a casserole on the table. A man my age has to use what advantages he has left, Joseph replied with a wink. William laughed, feeling the now familiar warmth that came from being part of their banter. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally from Joseph's recovery to Sarah's nursing studies, to Lily's latest school adventures. Miss Phillips says my essay was the best in class, Lily reported. It was about heroes and I wrote about Will. William nearly choked on his water. Me, I'm not a hero, Lily. Yes, you are, she insisted. You saved our building and fixed Grandpa's apartment, and you made it so Mum doesn't have to work night shifts anymore. This was news to William. He looked questioningly at Sarah. I was going to tell you, she said, looking slightly embarrassed. With the stable rent situation, I've been able to cut back my cleaning hours and focus more on my studies. I picked up a part-time position at the hospital instead, during normal hours. It's related to my nursing track and pays better. That's wonderful, William said sincerely. I'm so happy for you. After dinner, while Ruth and Lily washed dishes and Joseph rested, William and Sarah stepped outside for some fresh air. The night was cold but clear, with stars visible despite the city lights. Lily's right, you know, Sarah said as they walked slowly along the sidewalk. You have been heroic for our family. William shook his head. I've just been doing what felt right. Your family saved me, Sarah, not the other way around. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Maybe we saved each other. Something in her voice made William's heart beat faster. They stood close, their breath forming clouds in the cold air between them. Sarah, there you are. Lily's voice interrupted whatever William had been about to say. She bounded down the front steps of the building, coat unbuttoned, clearly having rushed out after them. Grandma wants to know if you want coffee and her apple cake. The moment broken, Sarah smiled at her daughter. That sounds lovely. We'll be right in. As they turned back toward the building, William felt Sarah's hand briefly touch his. A small gesture, but it left him wondering what might have happened if Lily hadn't appeared. Later that night, as William drove back to his penthouse, his phone rang. It was Marcus. We need to talk, his COO said without preamble. Sunbridge Capital made an offer today. They want to buy Harrington Enterprises, all of it. The Sunbridge Capital offer dominated William's thoughts for days. The numbers were staggering, well above market value, a premium that reflected the conglomerate's eagerness to acquire Harrington Enterprises' technology portfolio and client base. If William accepted, he would walk away with billions, enough wealth to last several lifetimes. It's an extraordinary opportunity, Marcus insisted during an emergency board meeting. The shareholders would see an immediate 40% return. We'd be negligent not to consider it seriously. The boardroom, once William's natural habitat, now felt stifling. The executives around the table nodded in agreement with Marcus, their eyes gleaming with the prospect of their own payouts from the deal. I'll need time to review the details, William said, his voice neutral despite the turmoil inside him. Let's reconvene next week. As he left the meeting, William heard the whispers behind him, concerns about his judgment, speculation about his strange behavior since Christmas, worries that he might actually reject the offer that would make them all even richer. In his office, William stood by the window overlooking Boston. From this height, he could see the river, the university campuses, the historic neighborhoods, and somewhere in that landscape, a small building on Walnut Street, where a family had taught him to feel again. The Sunbridge offer represented a chance to cash out, to walk away from the business he'd built and start fresh. 3 months ago, he might have seen it as an escape from the emptiness of his existence. Now it felt like a test. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Grandpa took 20 steps with just his cane today. Can you come see tomorrow?" William smiled, tapping out a quick reply. "Wouldn't miss it. Tell him I'm proud of him." The contrast between the warmth of that simple exchange and the cold calculation of the boardroom couldn't have been starker. That evening, instead of working late as he once would have, William drove to Mount Auburn Cemetery. The winter landscape was stark but peaceful as he made his way to Eleanor and James's graves. He hadn't visited since Christmas Eve, he realized with a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry it's been a while," he said softly, brushing snow from the markers. "Things have been changing." William sat on the cold bench facing the graves, gathering his thoughts. "I met a family. They've shown me what I've been missing these past 3 years, what I was probably missing even before I lost you." The silence of the cemetery enveloped him, but it felt comforting rather than oppressive. "There's this little girl. Lily, she reminds me of you sometimes, James. That same curiosity, for that openness to the world." He smiled at a memory. "And her mother, Sarah. She's extraordinary. Strong, determined, loving." William paused, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I think I might be falling in love again, Ellie. And part of me feels guilty about that, like I'm betraying what we had." A gentle breeze stirred the bare branches overhead, sending a dusting of snow onto the path. "The company's been offered a buyout. Massive money." The old me would have seen it as a victory lap, proof of success. William shook his head. "Now I'm not sure what success even means anymore." He sat in silence for a while, watching the lengthening shadows of evening. Finally, he stood and placed his hand on Eleanor's headstone. "I'll always love you both. Nothing will ever change that. But I think maybe it's time I stopped just existing and started living again. I think that's what you'd want for me." As William walked back to his car, he felt lighter somehow, as if a decision had crystallized within him without his conscious awareness. The next day brought a series of meetings about the Sunbridge offer. Financial analysts, lawyers, and consultants paraded through William's office, all extolling the benefits of the deal, all assuming his eventual acceptance was a foregone conclusion. "You've built something remarkable," Sunbridge's CEO told him during a private lunch. "But everyone reaches a point where it's time to hand over the reins. Think of what you could do with this kind of liquidity. Philanthropy, new ventures, anything you want." William nodded politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd promised to visit Joseph that afternoon, and the hours of corporate negotiations were making him increasingly impatient. Finally breaking free, William drove to the Carsons building. The transformation was visible even from outside. Fresh paint, repaired steps, new security doors. Residents nodded to him as he entered, some offering thanks, others simply acknowledging him as a now familiar presence. In the ground floor apartment, he found Joseph practicing with his cane under the watchful eyes of Ruth, Sarah, and Lily. "Will," Lily called when she saw him. "Watch Grandpa. He's almost running now." "Not quite running," Joseph corrected with a chuckle, "but getting there." William watched as the old man carefully made his way across the living room, his progress slow but steady. "That's impressive, Joseph. The physical therapist must be pleased." "She says he's recovering faster than patients half his age," Ruth said proudly. After demonstrating his progress, Joseph settled into his chair with a satisfied sigh. "Enough showing off for today. Sarah, why don't you and William take Lily to the park? It's a beautiful afternoon and I could use a nap." Sarah glanced at William questioningly. "If you're not too busy?" "Not at all," he replied, though his phone had been buzzing with messages from Marcus all afternoon. "Their park visit sounds perfect." The local playground was bustling with children, enjoying the unusually mild late winter day. Lily immediately ran to join a group at the swings, leaving Sarah and William on a bench nearby. "How are your classes going?" William asked. "Well, actually, I'm maintaining an A average, which isn't easy with everything else going on." Sarah watched her daughter with a tender expression. "Having regular hours has made such a difference. Lily and I actually have breakfast together now before school." William nodded, genuinely happy for her. "And the hospital position?" "It's challenging but rewarding. I'm working with the pediatric ward coordinator, mostly administrative tasks for now, but I get to interact with the patients too." Her face lit up when she spoke about it. "It confirms that nursing is absolutely the right path for me." "You're going to be an incredible nurse," William said. "You have the perfect combination of compassion and practicality." Sarah smiled at the compliment. "Thank you. That means a lot." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Lily navigate the playground social dynamics with her usual openness. "Something's on your mind," Sarah observed, glancing at William's profile. "You seem preoccupied today." William hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My company received a buyout offer. A very generous one." "Oh?" Sarah's expression was carefully neutral. "And you're considering it?" "Everyone expects me to. It would be the smart business decision according to my board. But what do you think?" William turned to face her fully. 3 months ago, I would have seen it as validation, proof that I'd built something valuable. Now I'm not so sure." "What's different?" Sarah asked, though her eyes suggested she might already know the answer. "Everything," William replied simply. "My perspective. My priorities. What I want from life." Lily called from the swings, "Mom! Will, watch how high I can go." They both waved and called encouragement, watching as she pumped her legs energetically, soaring higher than seemed safe to William's protective instincts. "She's fearless," he murmured. "Always has been," Sarah confirmed. "Sometimes it terrifies me, but I never want to clip her wings." When they returned to the apartment, they found Joseph awake and engaged in a spirited phone conversation. He hung up as they entered, a satisfied expression on his face. "That was Mrs. Abernathy from the 3rd floor," he announced. "The tenant association wants to plan a building community garden for the spring. They're asking for your approval, William." "They have it," William replied immediately. "In fact, I'll provide the initial funding for soil and plants." Joseph nodded approvingly. "I told them you'd say that. People are still getting used to having a landlord who actually cares about the community." The evening progressed with homework help for Lily, dinner preparation, and the comfortable domestic rhythm that William had come to cherish. As he chopped vegetables at Sarah's direction, he found himself imagining more evenings like this, years of them, stretching into a future that suddenly seemed full of possibility rather than emptiness. Later, as he prepared to leave, Sarah walked him to his car. The night was clear and cool, stars visible above the city lights. "Have you decided?" she asked quietly. "About the buyout?" William leaned against his car, considering. "I think I have, but I'm curious. What would you do if you were me?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I can't pretend to understand the business aspects, but I know that decisions based solely on money rarely lead to happiness." "That's been my experience," William agreed. "When my ex-husband left," Sarah continued, "he said he felt trapped by family life. He wanted freedom, adventure, the chance to find himself." She shook her head at the memory. "Last I heard, he was on his 2nd divorce and miserable in Arizona." "Some people don't recognize what matters until it's gone," William said. "And some people," Sarah added, meeting his eyes, "are fortunate enough to get a second chance to discover it." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Then Sarah smiled and stepped back. "Whatever you decide about your company, William, know that you'll always have a place at our table." Those words stayed with William as he drove back to his penthouse. A place at their table. Such a simple thing, yet it represented everything he'd been missing. The next morning, William called an emergency board meeting. The executives arrived expecting an announcement about accepting the Sunbridge offer. Instead, they found William calmly outlining his vision for the company's future. Independent, focused on sustainable growth, and committed to social responsibility. "I'm rejecting the Sunbridge offer," he concluded, ignoring the shocked expressions around the table. "Harrington Enterprises is not for sale." "William," Marcus sputtered, "you can't be serious. The premium they're offering..." is substantial, yes, but some things are worth more than money. William stood, signaling the end of the discussion. My decision is final. Those who wish to remain with the company under this direction are welcome. Those who don't, I understand, and I'll ensure fair severance packages. He left the boardroom amid a chorus of protests and arguments, feeling strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, his business decisions aligned perfectly with his personal values. It was liberating. Spring arrived in Boston with a burst of color and renewal. The community garden Joseph had mentioned took shape in the building's small courtyard, with residents of all ages participating in the planting. William often joined them on weekends, enjoying the simple satisfaction of working with his hands in the soil. On a particularly beautiful Saturday in April, he arrived at the building to find Lily waiting for him by the garden. Practically vibrating with excitement, "Will, finally, I've been waiting forever." William laughed. "I'm right on time according to my watch." "Well, your watch is slow," she declared, grabbing his hand. "Come on, I have something super important to show you." She led him not to the garden, but to the small playground area he'd had installed behind the building. The swings and climbing structure were already popular with the building's children, but today Lily bypassed them, heading for the wooden bench beneath a flowering dogwood tree. "Sit here," she instructed, her expression suddenly serious. William complied, curious about her mysterious behavior. "What's this about, Lily?" "It's about family," she said solemnly. "And choices." William's eyebrows rose. "That sounds very profound." "It is profound," she agreed, clearly enjoying the word. "I've been thinking a lot about families and how they get made." "Oh?" Lily nodded, her expression earnest. "Some families are born like me and Mom and Grandma and Grandpa. We're family because of blood." William nodded, wondering where this was going. "But some families are chosen," Lily continued. "Like when people get married or adopt kids. They decide to be family." "That's true," William agreed. Lily took a deep breath as if preparing for something momentous. "I've made a decision. I want to adopt you as my dad." William felt his heart stop, then restart with a painful lurch. "You, what?" "I want to adopt you as my dad," she repeated, her blue eyes serious and determined. "You don't have a family and I don't have a dad. It makes sense." William struggled to find words, overwhelmed by the simple logic and profound emotion of her statement. "Lily, I'm deeply honored, but adoption usually works the other way around. Adults adopt children." She shook her head. "That's just because adults make all the rules. There's no reason kids can't adopt parents if they need them. And you need a family, Will. Everyone can see that." The truth of her observation struck him deeply. He did need a family, had been starving for one without realizing it, until this little girl had found him crying in the snow. "Does your mother know you're proposing this adoption?" he asked gently. "Of course," Lily replied. "I asked her permission first. I'm not allowed to adopt people without telling her." William's heart raced. "And what did she say?" "She said I should ask you myself, because it's an important question that deserves a proper answer." William looked up to see Sarah standing a short distance away, watching them with a mixture of tenderness and uncertainty. She offered a small smile and a nod, confirming Lily's account. "So," Lily prompted, reclaiming his attention, "will you let me adopt you?" "As my dad?" William felt tears welling in his eyes, not tears of grief this time, but of overwhelming joy and gratitude. "Lily Carson, I would be honored beyond words to be adopted by you." Her face broke into a radiant smile. "Really, you mean it?" "I mean it with all my heart," William affirmed, "though we might need to work out the details of what this adoption looks like in practice." "That's easy," Lily said confidently. "You'll come to my school events and help with my homework, and have dinner with us lots of times, and take care of me if Mom needs help, and love me forever." "That's what dads do." "That sounds perfect," William agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "And I promise to do all those things, Lily. Forever." She threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. "I knew you'd say yes. Now we're family for real." Over Lily's shoulder, William saw Sarah approaching, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I hear." "Congratulations are in order," she said softly. "For both of you." "Your daughter is very persuasive," William replied, standing with Lily still clinging to him. "And very wise. She gets that from her grandfather," Sarah said, "along with her stubborn streak." I'm not stubborn, Lily protested, finally releasing William. I'm determined. There's a difference, Sarah laughed. Of course there is. Why don't you go tell Grandma and Grandpa the good news? They're in the garden. Once Lily had dashed off, Sarah turned to William. I hope you didn't feel pressured. She's been planning this adoption for weeks, but if it's too much... William took her hands in his. It's not too much. It's everything I didn't know I needed. Sarah's expression softened. She loves you, you know. We all do in our different ways. And I love all of you, William replied. Then, gathering his courage, he added, especially you, Sarah. Her eyes widened slightly. William, I don't expect anything, he said quickly. I know this is complicated. I'm technically your landlord. There's our age difference, and you have Lily to consider. But I wanted you to know how I feel. Sarah studied him for a long moment, then stepped closer. Complicated doesn't mean impossible, she said softly. And some things are worth figuring out no matter how messy the process might be. William felt hope bloom in his chest. Does that mean... It means, Sarah interrupted with a smile, that I'd like to see where this goes. Slowly, carefully, with Lily's well-being as our priority. I wouldn't want it any other way, William assured her. 1 year to the day after Lily had found William crying on the snowy steps, they returned to that same spot. But this time, William wasn't alone or in pain. He stood with Lily, Sarah, Ruth, and Joseph, now fully recovered and walking with only occasional use of a cane. The building behind them had been transformed, not into luxury condominiums, but into a vibrant, affordable community where families could put down roots without fear of displacement. It's strange to think how much has changed in just 1 year, Sarah mused, her hand resting comfortably in William's. All because Lily decided to share her chestnuts with a sad stranger, Ruth added, smiling at her granddaughter. Lily, now 8 and even more confident, grinned up at William. I knew you were special, even when you were crying. You were right, William acknowledged. You saw something in me that I'd forgotten was there. As they stood together,